check the, all right, that appears to be, going. Hi, guys, and, welcome to the last reading for this month for my puppet theater and fan fiction things. So before I actually, read the, disclaimer, I do have to say I wasn't actually able to finish this particular part of the story today. I did my best, but everything was really hectic outside for some reason today. All the time that I set aside so I could get to work on time to actually work on this before I actually started my day job, it did not happen. Everybody was out today and everybody was in my way. So I got as far as I could. But there will be a part in here that I'm actually stopping at. So we will pick up, not next month, but in June, with the conclusion of this half of the story. And I'm really sorry I wasn't able to finish it, guys. However, there's a good chunk of story tonight regardless. It's not going to be short, so it'll be nice and long. So, disclaimer. This is a work of fan fiction using characters from various fairy tale, TV, and film sources, including The House of Mouse. You'll know the reference immediately when you hear it, trust me. I began writing these shorts in order to preserve the tales that my best friend Shannon and I told to each other when we were children and were consistently getting Disney dolls for our birthdays and Christmases. That being said, I claim no ownership of certain plots, characters, or bits of world I am borrowing to tell these stories. The situations cobbled herein are meant to entertain and are not part of any official storyline, and you should not ascribe them to the original story or canon. No money is being made here, as previously stated. This is just for fun, and I hope you all get as much enjoyment out of me reading this as I have while writing it. Additionally, I'd like to thank the House of Mouse and a cast of several others for providing such a wealthy supply of fairy tale happy endings that I thoroughly enjoy destroying. And we're going to see some of that tonight. Whee! Here we go. Chapter 3, continued. The Devastating Prince. Time passed, and Charming and Cinderella were quite happy for a time, although it should be noted that the young princess's transition to palace life did not come without its difficulties. The rules of castle etiquette were all but unknown to the sheltered Cinderella, who had spent the whole of her life trapped within her father's slowly crumbling chateau. On her first day in the castle, following her honeymoon, the princess had been found in the kitchen, attempting to prepare a carefully planned breakfast, and had to be shooed away by the cook, who informed Her Majesty that princesses never prepared their own meals, and that the royal family would be aghast if they were to catch her there. But delicious palace gossip, such as this news, did in fact reach the ears of the queen, and she called Cinderella to her chambers for a royal chat. The princess arrived promptly, as instructed, to the queen's rooms and knocked politely on the large white doors. A gentle voice commanded her to enter, and when she did, she was surprised to discover that the queen was not alone. 3 other women were also there. A middle-aged brunette, who was wearing a stiff-looking gray frock and an equally stern look on her face. A blonde, dressed in blue, who seemed as though she were trying very hard to mimic the attitude of the former. And finally, a plump brunette in pink, who smiled shyly as she entered. The queen introduced the 3 women as Countess Legrand, Daphne, and Beatrice, Cinderella's new etiquette teacher and personal ladies-in-waiting. At the sight of the princess's distress, Marie calmly explained that the role of royalty could be quite daunting, an emotion she was quite familiar with, having experienced it herself when she first became queen. These women would help her transition, especially the Countess, who had been of great assistance to her in the past with such matters. Cinderella cast a nervous glance at the severe-looking woman, but thanked Her Majesty for her kindness and concern. The matter settled, the Queen dismissed them all, and Countess Legrand wasted no time and straightway began the process of transforming Cinderella into a proper princess. She taught her how to dress for each occasion, how to dance, how to address members of the royal family, how to prepare a dinner party, and keep a household. The work was hard and arduous, but the princess learned quickly, and soon she had perfected it all, to the point that nothing, not even a stray hair or thread, could be detected out of place on her person. And in the beginning, Charming was proud of his new wife. But as time went on and the princess's constant perfectionism and near hysterical desire to constantly please him began to outweigh his initial idea of her, the prince began to wonder if his impulsive desire to marry her had been a mistake. After all, he didn't want a perfect wife. He wanted someone adventurous and wild. Someone who didn't mind walking barefoot in the woods or laughing out loud when he told a particularly funny joke. In short, he was bored, and his eye began to wander. Hunting season returned, and Prince Charming and his companions took to the forest to hunt rabbit, deer, and, of course, the white stag. The other game they caught plenty of. The latter refused to be captured, as was its nature. After a full day of sport, the prince and his brood would return, not to the castle, where they were always anxiously expected, but to the city of Mosebury, to a pub called the Ash Tree. Here they would drink and boast and flirt shamelessly with the village girls. One particular evening, while the princes were thus engaged in their pleasurable routines, from among the throng of onlookers and fawning wenches, Charming caught the eye of a beautiful, dark-haired girl, who lingered idly by the bar. He was certain he had never seen her before, and rose from his chair to go and introduce himself. When he reached her, he caught up her hand and gently placed a chaste kiss on the back of it. He told her his name, and that he was the crown prince of this entire kingdom. But she was the loveliest creature he had seen in a very long time. The dark-haired girl laughed and informed His Majesty that she knew perfectly well who he was, and had been waiting for him for a very long time. Startled by this revelation, the prince asked why she hadn't come to him before. Again, the dark-haired girl laughed and said that that wasn't how the world worked, and if he thought her simpering, like the other wenches in this place, who would bow and scrape to his every need, then he was nothing but a spoiled little boy. Charming's mouth dropped. Never in his life had he been spoken to like this. He knew he should be angry, but her words only inflamed his curiosity and aroused his senses. Apologizing profusely for his initial judgment of her character, the prince asked what a man would have to do to find himself in her good graces. The girl looked slyly at him from under her dark hair, and said that he only needed to sit and talk with her a while. Curious, he agreed readily. The night wore on as the two sat talking in nearly hushed whispers, and when at last she rose to leave, the prince was utterly smitten, and asked when he would see her again. Smiling, The dark-haired girl informed him that should he wish to see her again, he only needed to return to the pub the following evening. Delighted, he agreed, and as he rode home, his mind filled with thoughts of her. All he could do was compare how different they were, his wife and the dark-haired beauty. She was everything Cinderella wasn't. Mysterious, sensual, forward, and it didn't hurt that she laughed whenever it suited her. He couldn't wait to return the following evening. The next night, Charming and his companions went out hunting, as usual. Afterwards, returning to the pub where the dark-haired girl waited for him, he went to her without a second thought, and together they spent the whole of the evening together, and it soon became apparent that neither of them had much interest in conversation. Desire rode the air like an untamed beast, and when the beautiful girl asked him upstairs to bed, the prince didn't even think to object. In that moment, both Cinderella and his duty were far from his mind. Much later, when they were lying breathlessly in each other's arms, Charming realized that she had never told him her name. When he asked, her giggle in the dark was mischievous as she answered, "Tara Lynn." During the months that followed, Charming began leaving the confines of his wife's embrace more and more to visit Tara Lynn in the Ash Tree pub, where they would make love all night long. But the absence of her husband didn't go unnoticed, and over time Cinderella began to suspect that something sinister was being played against her, and it wouldn't be long before the truth was revealed. Let's go this way. In the city of Mosebury, there resided a gentle baker man by the name of Robert. His bread was said to be the most delicious in all of Melusa, and it was true. Now it so happened that one of Cinderella's stepsisters, Anastasia, had begun making trips into that particular market square, and had fallen in love with the baker. Much had changed in the Tremaine household since Cinderella's departure, and having to learn to tend to the chateau had softened Anastasia's disagreeable temperament considerably. Now she saw the value of hard labor, and the many letters she had written to her stepsister apologizing for her cruel treatment of her had not gone unanswered. Cinderella forgave Anastasia, and the two began visiting each other regularly, and the latter confided to her princess that the baker man had quite stolen her heart, but knew that her mother would never agree to such a match. Cinderella informed her stepsister that her mother had no say when it came to matters of the heart, and that if the baker should ever propose marriage, she would be foolish not to accept. Anastasia took this advice to heart, and when the baker did eventually ask for her hand, she accepted gratefully. Despite Lady Tremaine's violent protestations, Anastasia and Robert were married in a small chapel in Mosebury. Furious at her daughter's disobedience, Lady Tremaine disowned her youngest child, saying that her foolishness at marrying a commoner had greatly shamed her, and if she never saw Anastasia again, it would not displease her in the slightest. Heartbroken but resolute, Anastasia left her stepfather's chateau and went to live with her new husband in the little flat above his bakehouse. It was here that she would learn to be a baker's wife, and it was here that Prince Charming's secret would finally be revealed. Anastasia loved her life as the wife of a baker. Certainly the work was hard, harder than anything she had ever done in her life. But seeing the smiles on the faces of the people when they came in to buy her husband's famous bread filled her with a joy she never knew she could feel. One of her absolute favorite things to do was when she prepared a basket and went out into the city to deliver loaves personally to the many merchants of the town. In the morning, she would deliver to the fishermen, blacksmiths, and butchers, and in the evening she would deliver to all the pubs, of which Mosebury had a plenty. One evening, as Anastasia made her way into the Ash Tree pub, she happened to catch sight of Charming talking earnestly to a dark-haired girl whose face she couldn't make out. Perplexed as to what His Majesty was doing here, and with someone who clearly wasn't his wife, Anastasia watched them for some time. It was obvious that they knew one another by the way they kept gazing into each other's eyes. But when the dark-haired girl took the prince's hand to lead him upstairs, Anastasia felt a sickening jolt in the pit of her stomach. She might not have been the brightest girl in the kingdom, but she had been to court enough times in her youth and had heard plenty of gossip to understand what it meant when a man took a woman to bed who was not his wife. Prince Charming, a man who she had not too long ago fantasized about marrying, was being unfaithful. Distracted and confused, she mumbled a hasty goodbye to the owner of the pub before handing him his breadbasket and making a swift exit before anyone there could recognize her. Later that evening, Anastasia confessed what she saw to her husband, who at first asked if she was certain if it was the prince she had seen. Anastasia nodded vigorously and said that she would recognize that profile anywhere. Robert rubbed the back of his neck nervously and said that as commoners, it wasn't really their place to meddle in the affairs of royals. Anastasia stamped her foot obstinately, a bit of her old temper showing through, as she stated that it wasn't just any royal, it was His Royal Highness, a married man, but not just that, married to her sister, a sister, she was certain, who had no idea of what was going on. She had to know, before it was too late. The baker blinked at his wife. In the little time they had spent getting to know one another, he had never seen her so passionate about anything, other than learning how to make bread. He took her hand, and giving her a tired smile, said that if she felt strongly about the matter, she should waste no time and tell her sister as soon as she was able. Anastasia smiled back, relieved, and vowed to do so as soon as possible. As it turned out, however, getting an audience with the princess proved harder than she would have thought. The castle seemed to be keeping her so busy that in the end Anastasia had to write a letter begging Her Highness for an audience. Cinderella replied at once, saying she would be delighted to see her sister and to come immediately the following morning. The next day, Anastasia strode through the gates of the castle, feeling nervous and more than a little apprehensive. How was she ever going to explain what she had seen? After all, Cinderella might not believe her, and Anastasia wouldn't blame her if she didn't. Her and her family had been so cruel to her over the years that the princess might decide that Anastasia's retelling of this tale was yet another sick joke at her expense. But when at last Cinderella appeared and greeted her with a warm smile and an even warmer embrace, she resolved right then and there to tell the truth. She owed it to this girl who had shown her nothing but kindness. The two retired to the princess's sitting room, where tea was brought, and Anastasia produced from her basket a loaf of her husband's delicious bread. Cinderella was delighted, and began to ask her all sorts of questions about her new life. Anastasia replied that she was ever so happy with Robert, but that was not the reason she had asked to speak with her. Cinderella's smile was puzzled, but asked her to elaborate. The other woman took a deep breath and unfolded all her tale. How she had seen His Majesty with a mysterious woman at the Ash Tree pub, and how she had seen him continuously since, while she was awaiting her chance to speak to Cinderella. Every time the prince was with the same woman, and every time Anastasia had felt in her gut that something was wrong. When she finished, Cinderella had gone very pale. Rising from her chair, she went to the window and looked out. After several minutes of silence, she thanked her stepsister for her honesty, but now she wished to be left alone to sort out her thoughts. Concerned, but not wishing to press the matter further, Anastasia rose from her chair, curtsied, and turned to leave the room. Just before she departed, she glanced back one last time and told her princess to come see her and her husband whenever she was able. Cinderella turned to look at her with a weak smile and promised she would. Anastasia smiled back, gave another curtsy, and left. That evening, when Charming returned from a night of carousing, Cinderella was waiting for him. The princess wasted no time and divulged all she had been told earlier that afternoon. When she had finished, hot, bitter tears were streaming down her cheeks, and the prince felt something inside of him awaken, as from a dream. Memories of the last few months resurfaced in his mind like bubbles rising in a pond. Disoriented and ashamed, he grasped Cinderella's hand, telling her that he hadn't known what he was doing, that he had clearly been bewitched by some sort of unspeakable magic. The look his wife gave him was withering, and she informed his Royal Highness that, whether by evil spell or wicked enchantment, this was a betrayal she could never forgive. A life lived away from her stepfamily had taught her some things cannot and should not be absolved. This was one of those things. Our story was supposed to be one of happily ever after, she lamented to him. But you have ruined that forever, and I can no longer live with a man who has shattered my heart. And with that, Cinderella slid her wedding band off her finger and presented it to Charming. I wish to be divorced. And that is the stopping point we will leave. So as always, if anyone has any questions, comments, concerns, snide remarks about the story thus far, you can always pop them up here in the chat, or when the live is concluded. I'm very active here on my art page. I will answer any and all. Ooh, and also, if anyone can guess the scenes that I took to create part of this, you should totally tell me in the comment section. I want to see if anyone knows, if you can guess. So I know I stated this before, I think last night. This was actually a story that I made up a long time ago when I was a little girl. I don't know from whence this came. I've actually been reading a lot of stuff online, which is very, very funny. If you go watch SNL's parody called My Little Stepchildren, and you just kind of like scroll through the comments, a lot of women talk about, when they were little girls, it was very dramatic in their dollhouses. People seem to think that we as girls just sort of play just happily, with our dolls, and like, oh, then they get married and that's happily ever after, and that. No. Girls are 100% vindictive when they play with their dolls. It's scandals and murders and affairs. Oh my. It's just, it's days of our lives up in this bitch. But I think I am also one of those girls. That is something that I did when I was when I was growing up. For some reason, I just didn't see Prince Charming as this faithful husband. I was like, he's got side bitches. Like, he's totally got side chicks going on for real. So Tara Lynn, that was not actually her name. When I first played with her, I don't know what I called her. It was probably Scarlet, so cliche, Scarlet Woman, ooh. Um, but this particular doll back in here has always been my Tara Lynn. She's the vixen that came in and destroyed Cinderella and Prince Charming's marriage. Just absolutely shattered it. And as an adult, I still think that it holds true. I still think that Prince Charming is flawed. But now, I'm still not going to give any spoilers unless anyone has kind of figured out what's going on. I give a backstory a little bit as to why that is, why he's doing the things he's doing, and yes, it does involve magic. And I always kind of thought Tara Lynn was a magic person, a witch of some kind, if you will. Some sort of dark, forest-dwelling temptress that just sort of showed up out of nowhere at a ball one day, and he's like, ooh, yes. So that's kind of the behind the story of this. If anybody is worried for our poor Prince Charming, he does eventually get a happy ending, eventually. But he has to go through some trials in order to kind of earn his happily ever after. Because I think as a prince, I think he feels that he deserves it. He deserves everything. He deserves the moon, the world. That's not how life goes. That's not how life goes, bro. So well, you'll see. He's got a lot of trials to go through. I don't know how much I should spoil here, because I really kind of want to spoil it a little bit, but maybe I won't. Maybe I'll do it not in the next live, but the live after, because there's going to be reoccurrences of these types of things going on for a while for Prince Charming. And then once his story is concluded, I think I'm planning on moving on to one of his brothers, maybe Prince Ferdinand or Prince Philip. I'm not sure. I'm kind of excited because for my birthday a few years ago, I actually got a Prince Philip, and I have not taken him out of the box yet. So when his story does come about, I will be doing that. But should I do it live or not? Should I do a box opening live? I don't know. We'll see. So I think that's it, except for if anyone wants to purchase the book that I wrote a few years ago, Lamentations of the Wood. I have one copy left. They are $15 each. You can message me here or on my other Facebook side if we are friends for real. And we'll do it through PayPal, and I will ship it out to you. Thank you to everyone who has bought a copy. It means a lot to me that, a little book is out in the world and it's doing stuff. Thank you guys so much for showing up and watching these, even when the live is concluded. It does mean a lot to me. I hope you get a kick out of them. I hope they brighten your day or give you at least a bright spot to come to, because we're still in the middle of a pandemic, and my side of the state got shut down again today. The restaurants, bars, and stuff are closed, so it's kind of a bummer. But the sun is out, so we'll be able to, if there's any writing to do, it'll be done in the backyard, which is fine, because our backyard is lovely. So anyway, I will see you guys in June, or the last week of May. I'll post a notice about it. I'll tell you. So have a great night, guys. Lovely weekend. I love you all. Stay safe, and I will see you later.